Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for our webinar for adoptive parents. This is Lifetime Adoption's Q&A for hopeful parents, so it's our question and answer session. And my name is Kim King. I'm one of the adoptive family coordinators here at Lifetime, co-hosting with Libby Deniston, another one of Lifetime's lovely coordinators here at Lifetime. We are excited to answer the questions that are on your minds. If you're thinking in your brain right now, this is a dumb question, go ahead and ask it. We are here for all questions, big and small, and we are happy to get into the topics that are on your minds and hearts tonight. Before we begin answering the first questions that are coming in, we would like to just go over a few details about how to contact Lifetime and what to do first if you are brand new to getting to know us here at Lifetime Adoption. Of course, the phone number is 1-800-923-6784. We do operate with support around the clock on that line. It is primarily a birth mom line, but if you're not sure how to reach us, you can call us on that number. If it's after hours, we can call you back the next day since it's probably not urgent. So you can always reach us on that phone line if need be. You can also follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/open.adoption. Great conversations, inspiration, and encouragement there on Facebook. And that's a way of easily incorporating Lifetime and adoption into your normal routine, since most of us do tend to peruse social media, I would say on a daily basis, but many of us probably do it a little more than just daily, probably multiple times throughout the day. But it's a good way to stay in the loop and just have a way to continue growing in your adoption. Continue typing in your questions right now, and we will begin answering those in just a couple of moments. I do want to let people know that we have a free online application. It's at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. If you're not sure how to get started, you can send me an email directly, kim@lifetimeadoption.com. I can send you information, a link to the application as well. But that is the first step. Whenever families inquire, we let them know that we first need to see their application. It is no obligation when you apply because we want to explore with you. So if you're not sure where to start, that is the perfect place to start, and we can normally have some feedback for you within 1 to 5 business days. And when you fill out your application, it actually gives us more of a platform to understand where you're coming from, what some of your family characteristics are, where you live, like what state you're in and whether or not we can assist you, as well as what you're looking for, a little bit about what you're looking for in your adoption. Now, if your application is pre-approved, then we'll move forward to have a phone conference to discuss your preferences in more detail and guide you through the steps from there. So the free application is online at lifetimeadoption.com/apply, and it's never too early to get that conversation started with us so we can begin to answer more questions specifically tailored to your needs and circumstances. You can also email in general to Lifetime, adopt@lifetimeadoption.com, and you can browse around on our website as well. We have lots of articles. We have a great blog. We've been doing a series on the then and now adoptive parents before they adopted, show their photo, show now their photo with their new little one, and a little bit of their story, what made their adoption unique and how it all came together. So we've been doing a great little series on our blog with that, as well as sharing some really good parenting tips on there for parenting through adoption. So peruse the blog. And Libby, if you are ready, we can go ahead and hop into our Q&A time.
Yeah, I've been typing with people already because sometimes also, like Kim started out tonight, if you have a question on your mind and you're thinking, oh, I don't know if this is even relevant, it's okay to type it in because we will either address it for everyone to hear or try and type with you to get you an answer and direction privately. And so that's a little bit of what I've already been doing here. But I loved all the information you handed out, Kim, because that's one of the great things I think about Lifetime. And actually, I hear this from birth mothers too, is that just the variety of methods to get answers to questions and have contact with someone at Lifetime Marty always keeps things on the cutting edge, and even as recent as a couple weeks ago, we found a new resource that we're panning out so that people can more easily text with us too. But that is something, whatever works for you. If you like to talk by phone, then call. If you like to email, email. If you want to send a message through our website, go for that, or even participate on Facebook. There's so many ways for you to stay connected or get the information you need. So I'm glad we could run through that a little bit. But Kim, real quick, this seems, I guess sometimes I take it for granted because I think that a lot of people know a little bit more what Lifetime does, but, and I wasn't going to bring this question up first, but I thought, there might be people on the call who just want a simple answer to this. And we had our first question typed in that said, do you do international adoptions? And so Kim, could you just clarify sort of in a nutshell what Lifetime does and where we serve?
Yes. Actually, I hear this question a lot in my interaction with adoptive parents on the beginning end of their journey as they're just meeting us, getting to know us here at Lifetime. They want to know, what type of adoption do we do? Is it international? Is it domestic? Is it foster adoption? It's domestic only, so within the U.S., and it's private adoption only, meaning that the birth moms are choosing adoption for their baby or child, and they're choosing the family, and we're helping them bring their adoption plan together with the adoptive parents of their choice. So that is private adoption, where it is a voluntary relinquishment. A birth mom can choose you from anywhere in the U.S., with the exception of if you are a New Jersey family, then we've already discussed that with you. If you are a New Jersey family listening, email me, kim@lifetimeadoption.com, and I'll fill you in on the details. And when you email me, just let me know your first and last name and what state you're in as well, so I can give you the right information. But hopefully that helps as you start to get to know us.
Let's see here. I just wanted to address this real quick since we talked about this before we began, but since there's some of you still settling in, here we had a great question. How can I see everyone's questions? And with tonight's Q&A, what you'll do is type your questions into the box on your screen that's usually labeled questions or chat, and Kim and I will answer as many of those as possible. And that's where you can type your comments too, but you won't be able to see all of the other questions, but we will go over as many as we can so you'll know what other people are asking. Here's a great question about the application. We are about 1.5 years away from being able to take the next step with our adoption, but should we apply now?
That's an interesting question. I'm really curious to know why 1.5 years away. There could be a variety of factors, and it could be a really great time for you to start developing your relationship, to really get to know an agency over time. And then it's actually when families are ever in the position to where they know they're going to be adopting, but there's something that needs to happen first that they're waiting for before they're going to take that leap of faith and actually actively pursue their adoption. That is a great incubator, so to speak, to really get to know people at the inquiry level, at the exploratory level, and really decide what organization is the best fit for you and be able to develop that over time. Sometimes families are in a position to where they've decided they're adopting and time is of the essence, and they don't have the opportunity to wait 6 months or a year before they jump into it, nor would they want to wait that long. But if you can see the positive side of it, I definitely think it's a great time to start getting to know us. Be sure to just fill out what's going on in your circumstances on the application so that we can explore that further with you and let you know what options we might have. You might have more options than you think, but first we would need to look at your circumstances and everything and guide you through it and tailor fit a variety of options for you.
And we had kind of a follow-up to that just said, well, primarily it's, we're saving up money and just kind of getting in a good place to start. And there are usually, just as with birth mothers, with adopted parents, it's totally at your pace. So no one's going to pressure you, even if you apply. A lot of times, like what Kim was saying, is that we can learn more about you, help point you in directions, but there may also be some programs that could help you adopt a little sooner than your goal, but that can meet you where you're at right now too. Or to start the process a little sooner than you think. So it's always worth it, I think, to apply and feel it out because it is free application after all, and it doesn't obligate you to anything, which is kind of unique. I was actually, Kim, this is sort of an interesting twist to just add to this question a little bit of why I think that our application process is so unique, is that we know not every adoption agency or professional has a free application. And I was actually asked by a pregnancy clinic how we find our adoptive parents and what kind of screening they go through, because that's usually a big concern on the birth mother's side is, are the adoptive parents safe? How do you know they are who they say they are? How do you trust them? And so this pregnancy clinic was talking, you know, kind of along the lines of how do I protect the women I'm helping from, you know, getting involved with people who aren't legitimate. And our application process, a lot of people are intimidated to apply, but what it really does is it also helps you explore. It's not just about us finding out who you are and what you're looking for, but it's also helping you to explore what am I looking for? And I never thought of that before. So it can be really self-exploratory also, and also to help you know which questions you need answers to later, because it's impossible to think of everything on the front end. It kind of comes step by step. And Kim, while we're talking about how this family mentioned that one of the major reasons that they're, you know, kind of looking a year down the road is because of the finances, can you talk a little bit about what you usually tell a family who, because that's a pretty common question when it comes to adopting is, you know, how do most adoptive parents cover adoption fees? And then also they want to know sort of what, you know, how much to prepare for or plan for or get in budget. So how do you usually help those families that identify with that?
Okay. So I have a few other questions within that I want to just answer real quick. So as far as like how much you need to plan for financially, it really depends on which of Lifetime's programs you're looking at, which of Lifetime's programs you are offered. And I can send you a spreadsheet that compares our different programs, as well as a list of expenses that are pretty standard no matter which program you're in. So just email me, kim@lifetimeadoption.com, and let me know that you'd like to receive our spreadsheet of programs and budget details, and I'll send those to you. I would recommend that families budget anywhere from $16,000 to $35,000 for their private adoption with Lifetime, depending on which program they're in. That's a big range, so it's really helpful if you have the opportunity to look over what's included in each program and the expenses that are outside of Lifetime. But a total budget could be anywhere from $16,000 as a minimum up to roughly $35,000-ish. So somewhere in there. Now, that is a lot for pretty much most families. So how do you go about it? There are so many ways to fund adoption. The three kind of umbrellas are, you know, fundraising, savings, and financing. There's a very small umbrella for grants. Grants are fewer and farther between. If people do know of grants that have been helpful to them, let us know that so we can share that with the listeners as well. There is a website called adoptionfinancinginformation.com. That's adoptionfinancinginformation.com, where we have a whole list of resources, websites you can go to, different grants that our families have received over the years. So you can go there to adoptionfinancinginformation.com and browse around if you are interested in looking at grants. But really, the families that are more proactive are the ones who are fundraising, saving, and are open to financing. Or maybe just 2 out of the 3. It's pretty rare that a family is able to just use one method. Most people are not eager to, finance the whole thing. They probably want to use a little bit of their savings and minimize the loan, but they might want to keep that savings as a padding and just, get a loan for the rest to keep more funds fluid for them. So how would you go about financing? You can look at borrowing from a 401k retirement fund. You can pay yourselves back with interest, especially if you're not planning to retire anytime soon, like within the next 5 years, 10 years. You could make a plan to pay yourself back with interest. If you're not planning on retiring in that time, it'll be all back in there and then some by the time you're ready to retire. So that's one option that many of our families have used. Other families have used credit cards for some or all of their fee with Lifetime. Marty is big on this recommendation because she really likes when you can, kind of get something extra with what you're going to do anyway. So since you're going to be spending money anyway, you might as well get Sky Miles to use toward your adoption or cash back to use toward your adoption. So you can do that. Sometimes people go into our payment plan with a credit card, so that is a really good idea to consider. Of course, you want to be on the same page as a couple and make wise decisions. Also, you can look at a home equity line of credit. Sometimes people are in the position to do that, but it may not have occurred to them that they can do that. Our director, Heather, also looks at the option of having your parents do the financing so you can benefit from their probably better credit rating, and then you pay your parents back. Maybe they do the home equity line of credit, or maybe you look at some of the options they have. Many times, actually, the future adoptive grandparents are willing to contribute in a large way toward their son or daughter's adoption fund. They most likely have watched as you've gone through your journey, and they're very supportive, and if they have the means, they would love to help bring that grandbaby home sooner rather than later, if you get what I'm talking about. So you can just consider these options. The other thing is, I'm a big fan of credit unions. My husband works at a credit union, and he really just loves the whole culture of a credit union. So I would recommend going to your local bank or credit union to look at what options they have to offer you that you can consider. I'm not sending you in a certain direction saying this is what you should do, but I'm just saying look at what your options are so that you're in a position to make a choice, so that you're not feeling stuck. But open the door to the options and then discuss it as a couple, pray about it, and take the path that is the best, considering long-term and short-term benefits. The short-term is if you finance, you're probably moving forward a lot sooner than if you spend the next 5 years saving, $500 a month or something like that. I'm not doing math here. I'm just giving an example.
Right.
But
what I'm hearing in your answer too, Kim, is just that the majority of adoptive parents today aren't just sitting on a huge lump sum that they're ready to apply towards an adoption. It's something that many families combine efforts, and whether or not you're comfortable asking your parents to finance adoption fees for you, I do think that there's definitely value in asking others, when they say, how can I help, that you could say every little bit counts. Here's how you can donate, or if it's on your heart, and then to just kind of spread the word. I have worked with several adoptive parents who were just beyond blessed to get checks in the mail, or mom's neighbor knew so-and-so who knew somebody, and then suddenly they ended up saying, oh, I've been having this on the kitchen counter for you. I've been meaning to give this to you because Mrs. whatever down the street wanted to help, so sometimes people just want to bless you in that way, and it's okay to accept the help. But I was also going to add that these kinds of tips, yes, they are good for people who are just starting an adoption plan, who are just looking into getting their foot in the door. But also, there are several, I know of several adoptive families already in Lifetime's program who continue to fundraise So they're perpetually building their budget and refreshing their funds, maybe paying themselves back for anything they financed or anything they took out of savings or anything like that. But also because as much as we work hard to protect your bottom line and to lead you in directions that are going to protect your financial interest when it comes to adoption and help you minimize costs and only pay for services that your adoption will need, sometimes you still can't control the unknown. And there have been times when you may, let's say that you live in a state and Kim tells you, well, on average, families where you live usually budget $6,000 for attorney fees. So you plan for that. But then maybe you end up in a situation where you need an extra attorney, maybe an extra social worker or some kind of help, or maybe things take a little longer to process and you need to add to your legal team to help complete the adoption. All of those fees can suddenly surprise someone who hasn't been perpetually adding some to their adoption funds all along. And so
Right.
it's a good idea.
Well,
I've seen, there's actually a couple families we've worked with that just this year have sent me amazing results from yard sales, or they made up really creative little t-shirts that had fun graphics on them and led to their website on the back, or just maybe it wasn't even adoption related, but they made some cute little t-shirts to sell as a fundraiser and spread the word while they were getting those out to the public. And then other people have done spaghetti feeds and different kinds of things like that. So like I said, every little bit counts. And it's not just families who haven't applied yet that need this information. A lot of times it's people already working with an adoption professional that still need to remember that other adoptive parents are doing this along the way too.
mhm. And you can set up an online crowdfunding page for your adoption
Mm-hmm.
through purecharity.com. That's pure, P as in Paul, U-R-E, charity.com. And if you go on to purecharity.com to set up your little page there where people can go and donate, you can choose Lifetime as your partner through A Lifetime Foundation. We are listed there on Pure Charity as a partner under A Lifetime Foundation. So that's another way that families have been really surprised at the contributions they've received. And there are definitely some common characteristics with the ones who are more successful on Pure Charity. Sharing your story, giving a compelling reason so that people can understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and anything special that stands out about your adoption journey or what you're open to in an adoption. And you can also even add a little video. Definitely add a photo so that people can see your faces as they're reading your story. But definitely think about setting up a Pure Charity. Now, if you are a married couple, please consult with your spouse before you do that, because everyone feels a little differently, and it's important that even if you think you're going to be on the same page, it's kind of like just bringing home a dog out of nowhere, and then the husband is like, I never wanted this dog anyway, so
But
from there on into
probably
the
on a
future, every
grander
time.
scale. Yeah.
Right. Well, we're just talking about the fundraising page. We're not talking about anything else. I don't know what you're getting at, Libby.
Okay.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, we need to make sure that each step you take, you're both fully on the same page so that you can have that healthy, stable foundation as you move forward into the unknown, into the leap of faith that it requires. When adoption innately requires you to take a leap of faith. Innately, it is the unknown. So that is a given, and it's very important for you to have a good, stable foundation in your marriage, and hopefully in your faith as well as you move forward.
Yeah, communication is the one thing that I continue to hear whenever we have both husband and wife come on to share their stories on webinars. They always offer communication tips and how valuable that is through the whole journey, because if you are either trying to make all the decisions on your own, or if you're trying to just emotionally process it and you're not communicating to your spouse, it can leave you in a really confusing place, especially if you're not on the same page by the time a birth mother calls you. And
Mm-hmm.
and you might even be surprised to know that your spouse was feeling a certain way or that certain decisions were made. So communication, I would say, is like probably up in the top 3 when it comes to whether or not you should start an adoption. Um, we had a few questions about home studies, Kim, and then also
Mm-hmm.
a really great question, because we were talking about financing, and then I know I've been answering some questions about the types of adoptions that we do. And I thought it'd be good to touch on the second half of this question. Thank you, Candace. She actually shared that, having an open adoption doesn't intimidate her. Working with a birth mother doesn't intimidate her. It's more about investing in the process, and then investing financially, especially into the process, but also emotionally, and then suddenly just being told it's never going to happen and you're shut down and your adoption dream is squished, is what she said, squished. And so how can we speak to, the characteristics of a successful lifetime family, but also being sensitive to the nature that is, we really focus on the fact that birth mothers today get to choose their baby's adoptive family, which sometimes takes the control out of the agency's hand. So
Mm-hmm.
what would you tell a family who's thinking, well, we really want to, and we're not afraid of birth mothers, and we're not afraid of loving a child we adopt. We're totally on board with that, but it's actually taking that first step and investing ourselves into this whole process that makes us leery because we're not sure what's ahead.
Mm-hmm. Well, for starters, I would say most people who are coming from infertility treatments into adoption, for most people coming from that direction, adoption is a breath of fresh air because now you finally have steps you can follow where it's a little more of a sure thing versus like a medical treatment that may or may not take. So hopefully adoption can be a breath of fresh air. Most people have a little more or a lot more confidence as they move forward into adoption versus what they've come through with miscarriages and IVF and everything. Now, once you have decided to explore adoption, the next thing is that you're going to be setting up your preferences for what you're open to in your adoption. Not necessarily what your perfect adoption scenario would be, because that's probably going to create too many specifics, but all the things that you know for sure you're going to say yes to in your adoption. That, okay, if they have this characteristic, that really wouldn't stop us. We would want to be chosen by that birth mom. We would want to move forward. As you are setting up your preferences, just be aware. Be aware of not creating unnecessary limitations for yourself. So if there are some areas where you're thinking, well, we'd like to be a little more specific in this area, well, really question that. Why are we being more specific? Do we have concrete reasons that we just can't get around? And, these characteristics are going to interfere with our ability to effectively parent this child, whether it be we live in a real rural area, so special needs, this isn't a fit for us. Or, race, there are some races that we know would be fully accepted into our family, but then there are maybe 1 or 2 races that wouldn't be fully accepted into our family. Just be really aware of the decisions that you're making and where any limitations are coming from, and really pray about it as well so that you're not missing out on someone that actually might be a really good fit for you in your adoption. So if you are very aware of setting your preferences so that you can have the best opportunity to be successful, then you're going to have a lot more confidence moving forward as you seek out the right adoption professional. Now, sometimes people come to us here at Lifetime first, and we help them discover their preferences. We give them more insight as to what we see, what we don't see, or what direction they should take if there is a certain thing that they're looking for in their adoption that we can't meet that need. So sometimes we are walking with people as they are discovering the preferences for themselves. And that's great. That's part of the application process that you can take advantage of if you're early in your journey. And then after you've set up your preferences, we can give you feedback as to whether or not we feel confident you'll be successful. From there, you're following a path, and you are following a path that thousands of families have walked before you. And those families that follow all the steps, do everything that is needed to complete their successful adoption, obviously, they're successful. You follow the recipe, you get the desired result. And so hopefully, if you are working with Lifetime, I know that we do provide a step-by-step guided approach, but hopefully no matter who you're working with, there is a recipe to follow so that you can do your part and leave the rest in God's hands.
Mm-hmm. And those are, gosh, where was my train of thought going? You hit on something, Kim, that I was going to go to, and I was answering a question.
Preferences.
Yeah, and I think the reality that I always come to is that we have to remember too, because we know the risk you're taking. But at Lifetime, our whole staff is sincerely dedicated to your adoption success. Nobody's showing up thinking, well, we'll just see what happens today. No. Usually most of us are dreaming about the birth mothers we need to follow up with, or having meetings and even hashing out ideas, hey, there's this family, they've been waiting a little longer than expected. Is there anything else we can try? Anything they can try? So it's, while you're not coming to Lifetime for one adoption, we're not the type of agency that's going to just throw out a bunch of situations and then invite a whole bunch of people to apply for that one situation. What we're doing is we're working with women, dozens of women every day who are considering adoption, and then the ones who want to follow through with an adoption plan, we're walking through that match with the adoptive parents and the birth mother until the adoption's completed. And our goal is to see you bring that baby home. But our goal is also to make sure that these women who are choosing adoption are choosing adoption freely, without pressure or obligation, that they are supported and educated so that they're making informed decisions. That means they're less likely to change their mind later, which is, again, to protect you too. So really, some of it, I think, comes down to whoever you trust to help you adopt. Find out where their heart is and get a trust level with them so that you believe in what they're doing. Because if you have doubts about the services that they're providing you, it's just going to make your wait even harder. And then you're going to struggle to have confidence that it's going to work. And those low days, those valleys will come. Actually, this time of year, I notice we kind of get out of the hecticness of summer, and the days are getting a little shorter, and people are looking down the barrel of Halloween and Thanksgiving, like right around the corner, and they start getting kind of antsy, I would say, about, where's my baby? This hasn't happened yet. And to just prepare yourself for what works to help you get through those times when you may struggle not knowing what's happening behind the scenes. And work with an adoption professional that you trust is working in your best interest for the great good of this amazing adoption story that's ahead for you, for all sides involved. So sometimes it's not about logistic answers. It's just about finding out what do I need in my adoption, and am I getting the right help for that?
Right. And I was thinking too, when you were talking about, getting to know your adoption professional, picking one that you believe in how they're doing it and what they're doing as they work with you, and so hopefully, the woman who will someday place her baby with you and everything. You also want to make sure that you ask ahead of time, is that agency actually hearing from birth moms? Or if you're considering an attorney, do you hear from, when's the last time you heard from a birth mom? How many birth moms do you work with? How many adoptions are you doing? Because now more than ever, I'm hearing from families who are coming to Lifetime to explore further how they can expand their search with Lifetime, because they've already been waiting with a smaller place locally, but they've found out that there have only been a few adoptions in a year, or only one in a month maybe, or one in the last 3 months. It doesn't make sense to have a lot of hope if the agency you're working with isn't really hearing from birth moms. You need to take some action steps and get to where the birth moms are so that you have the likelihood of being chosen. So just have that awareness to ask some good questions before you, make a commitment with an organization that's going to walk with you through this journey.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that, I love that word commitment too. Actually, it's often that I think of it sort of as a partnership, because
Mm-hmm.
not one person at Lifetime or Lifetime's team as a whole is directly responsible for your adoption. You are also responsible for a great portion of that. And a lot of you listening right now would probably be shocked to know how many families we have sort of red flagged in a sense because they don't have a home study completed, or they let a home study lapse, or they keep declining opportunities to adopt that are perfectly reasonable and within their preferences, or they just don't call back, that they're out of touch and we don't know what's going on with them. And so there are a lot of people who just sort of let things fall through the cracks, and those.
You know what, Libby? What surprises me is when I see a family actively not incorporating our profile advice.
Mhm. Right,
That
because
the
that's a big part of our
profile coordinator,
services.
yes, that is your
Mhm.
ambassador. You need to create a great profile. You're not responsible for figuring out how to create a great profile. That's what we're here for, to help guide you through it. We give you sample profiles, instructions in your welcome binder. Your profile coordinator will guide you through it. Be sure to incorporate the advice of your profile coordinator. After all, she's getting the feedback from birth moms. She knows what is successful. She knows what wording to use, what not to use. She knows the formula to whether or not you should include other children in your photo, in your profile, how many photos of other children are okay, where those should be. The types of photos that you need to have and the type of wording that you need to have in or not have is sometimes more of the problem. She's giving you this because she wants you to be successful. So be sure to have an open mind and an open heart through every phase of your adoption journey, and especially with the profile, because that can be a little tricky because sometimes adoptive parents perceive the profile development process as a matter of opinion or a series of opinions. But it's really not. For us here at Lifetime, it is more a matter of fact and what is successful and what isn't. So sometimes when families aren't following our advice, it's because they don't know all the things that we know as to why we're asking them to do things a certain way.
Mhm. Um, I love that tip about profiles, and gosh, I feel like we could just do a whole webinar on profiles, but that's really more relevant for people already working with Lifetime, and I know there's some mixed audience here tonight too. So, um,
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure we don't spill the beans too much,
Well,
but
and
also,
everyone's recipe is different
yeah,
based on what
what
birth moms are attracted and
exactly.
responding to their outreach. Yeah. So
Right.
there's a different vibe and culture to every organization.
There is, and also, a good example of that is, for instance, I had recently a family say, we really, really want to work with a local adoption agency that we can go sit in an office with. And, Lifetime works nationwide, but we don't get to meet most of the people we help, other than through webinars and phone calls and emails and sometimes even video chat. But if you are the type of person that needs to walk down the street to see your adoption agency's door, that's a different kind of program, and they may cater their adoption profiles to meet more localized birth mothers too. So they may have pregnant women that are
Mm-hmm.
doing, walk-bys instead of calling or researching online. They may have a trend where it's really more women that stop in and make appointments and want to look through actual, like, hardbound books of glossy photos of these families. That's a little bit more old school, and it doesn't really happen as much anymore, but that's a good example of what Kim was talking about, where every adoption program has to tailor their profile recipe, in a sense, to the needs of the women who are contacting them. I will give you a great example. Just Tuesday night, I was on call, and this birth mother was actually really early in her pregnancy, considering her options, had really great questions, but a lot of it kept circling back to, the answer to her questions could be found once she finds just the right adoptive parents. But she wasn't ready yet to get anything in the mail, even though her mom knows she's thinking about adoption and she's told people. She just, she's in her early 20s. She doesn't want to get something in the mail. She wanted something emailed. And so we have books and brochures that women can read in apps or in PDFs or in e-readers or whatever they need on their mobile devices or computers, because they may not want to get a physical packet even if they're not hiding their adoption plans. Um, and so not every adoption center operates like that. But we continue to keep everything updated because we have to meet the needs of the women who are calling us. If for some reason I could only tell this woman, no, I'm sorry, I must have your address because I need to physically mail you something, she might have thought, how ancient is this place? And she's not listening to me. I told her I wanted an email. So it's really about
Mhm.
meeting her needs, and it's so cool just to see the different ways, even the videos on our websites. A lot of you may be looking at
Mhm.
Lifetime's site already, and maybe you've kind of skimmed over the adoption profiles that are online already and thought, oh, these families are cool. I wonder if I could be one of them. But look at the families that have videos, and they're all so different. Um, and the women today who are considering adoption, a lot of them just skip over the profile and just go to the video and then read the profile as sort of like reiterate what they learned or fill in the holes. So it really varies, and that's such a good question to ask when you're interviewing adoption professionals, is not only are you hearing from birth moms, but how do you meet their needs? How are you supporting them? Um, because that's for your adoption's benefit too. If a woman feels unsupported when she's choosing adoption, she's probably more likely to back out of it last minute. Um, so we had some great questions too. I wanted to make sure we get back to the home study questions, because there was a question at the beginning of our webinar, Kim, that said, is the home study hard? And then we've kind of had other questions along the way that said, how long is a home study usually good for? So let's talk a little bit
Mhm.
about home study basics.
Okay, so home studies usually take about 6 to 8 weeks to complete. Some home study providers are asking adoptive parents to expect it to take 3 months. So that's a little long, but they may have reasons why, especially if you are waiting until during the holidays to get it started. Well, it's going to take longer. So if you know that you're going to be adopting, I would recommend trying to get the ball rolling. Now is a good time to get a home study started and get that completed before the holidays roll around. So home studies usually take 6 to 8 weeks. It involves a social worker in your state talking with you, reviewing your paperwork, learning about you, looking around your home to make sure you meet the long list of requirements for a family to become approved to adopt in your state. Every state has different requirements that adoptive parents have to meet. Some require a 1-year length of marriage. Surprisingly, some don't require a length of marriage, just a marriage date to be able to adopt together as a couple. Some require you to be 21, some require you to be 25. There are all different kinds of things that states require, and most families that are coming to Lifetime meet or exceed the basic requirements. Financially, the social worker will want to make sure you can provide for this child and that the child will not be living below the poverty line within your household. If you have a 1-bedroom place that you live in, they're going to want to know what your plans are for where the baby's room is going to be when the baby gets a little bigger, too big to sleep in your room, because most of our adoptions are newborn. But they're going to do the background checks. They want to make sure you don't have any felonies or child-related crimes. They'll need a note from your physician saying that you are in good health to parent a child, you have a normal life expectancy. If you have battled any type of disease or illness, then if you have been given a clean bill of health, your state will probably have a certain time frame, like maybe 1 year, that you have to be cancer-free or something like that. So if you had cancer 5 years ago, most likely that's not going to stop you from adopting now. So there are a lot of things like that that they look at. They will interview you together and separately. They will meet each and every one of your pets, and anyone who is an adult in your household will be subject to the background checks as well. Or if they're living on your property, let's say you have a house and you have another building on your property that someone is renting, the renter is subject to your background check. So just make sure that you cover any bases or have the renter moved out if they are going to compromise your ability to get approved in a home study. For most families, this is just a series of steps that you go through, just like buying a house, where they're like, okay, now do this, now jump through this hoop, now jump 3 feet tall, now sit down for 5 minutes, like you're just following the instructions, giving them what they're requesting, all the forms, marriage certificate, all those kinds of things. But you don't have to own a home. You can live in an apartment or other type of structure as long as it meets your state requirements. So hopefully that helps with some specifics and kind of an overview of what's in the home study.
Mm-hmm. We had a great follow-up question that just said, so what if I move? Do I need to do a new home study?
You may not need an entirely new home study if you're just moving around like in the same community, because most likely you're going to have your same job, you're just moving house. Well, then it's just the house part of it that needs to be updated, but all your background checks are still the same. You're still at the same jobs. Your history is all still the same. And your parenting outlooks are still all the same. And the requirements that pertain to your home study are all still the same if you're just moving around in the same community. But if you are switching counties or states, you may have more involved. So with county, there may be different requirements in a state based on the county. Not always, but sometimes. So you might need to work with a home study provider in that county to bring your home study up to their requirements. If you've moved states, most likely you will need a new home study because it's sort of becoming obsolete, those days of a home study provider in Texas accepting a home study from someone in Tennessee and just updating it and trusting that everything is valid. Nowadays, in the age of liability, most social workers want to check it out for themselves. After all, they are the ones recommending that you're able to adopt, and if anything was to happen, then they are questioned.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The home study, Kim, I met with a family and after, it was about 3 months after their baby was born. So it was really fun to just get to see this adopted mom all kind of settled in, getting her routine and her kind of groove down with the baby. And she just, I remember one of the things she just told me about was this story about how they had a great opportunity to sell their home and buy a new home that was slightly bigger. And so they realized we're going to have to update our home study. And this was one of those women that just, like she keeps her to-do list and check things off. I mean, like I would love for her to organize my house. But so she was on top of it. But she was on top of it in such a way that she was determined not to let time lapse between the move too long because she didn't want to have to say no to any potential birth mother opportunities. And it really worked out in her benefit because right after she finished this update after the move was when her son's birth mother chose them. And they wouldn't have been ready, but she reflected on this. And a lot of you who have completed a home study would probably identify with this, but she had moved and she said that, number one, that the home study provider, just remember going back to the is it hard to do a home study question, those home study providers, they want to help you. They want to celebrate your adoption. They're not there to shake a finger or do a white glove test. So try and take a little of the nerves away and just know that this is another human who is happy that you're on this journey. So
Mhm.
knowing that, this adopted mom told me how they were told by their home study worker, you must have every box unpacked. It must not look like you just moved in. So they unpacked within like 2 weeks every single thing in their house because they wanted to get this home study updated quickly. Put away, found a place for everything. Had to get the cardboard boxes out, all the totes out. It couldn't look like things were in flux. Had to be a settled home. Now, I don't know if that's true in every county or every state, but this particular situation it was. But then she also the social worker kind of nitpicked about where the first aid kit needed to live, and they needed to have one in the kitchen, I guess, because in case they fell on the floor or something, they'd have to be able to slither over and get it out of a bottom cupboard or something. Um, so it had to be in a certain place. And then they also had to have, and a lot of you might be giggling about this right now or rolling your eyes, they
I'm giggling at your word slither.
they also had to have a fire extinguisher in the kitchen. Now, I have to say, I have relatives that I'm close to who are firefighters. I'm not even sure they have fire extinguishers hanging on the wall in their kitchen, like we're in a restaurant or something. But to pass this home study, they needed to do this. And so then they just felt like this is so unsightly. Who keeps a fire extinguisher just hanging on the wall in plain sight in the kitchen? But anyways, they took this funny picture after the home study was completed of them taking the fire extinguisher down and celebrating that they don't have to have this unsightly extinguisher in the middle of their white, bright kitchen. But the great thing that she brought up was, she said, it took a lot of work to do the home study, and I always kind of just wondered, like, is this really as big of a deal as it seems to be? She said, but boy, did that home study come into place when we were trying to get our baby home. That's when I really saw how much our efforts mattered and how glad I was that we had all of our ducks in a row and that we had that puppy completed, because the attorney needed it, the state needed it. Um, there were all kinds of people just working in their behalf to get them home with that new baby. And when families take that process for granted, I think that they're underestimating the power of the home study once it's needed. You may not need it right now while you're waiting, but you're going to. So when we talk about partnering with us, that also means that we're counting on you to keep these things you're responsible for valid and ready, because we we would hate for you to have to say, oh my gosh, this sounds like a perfect situation, but our home study lapsed and we just keep putting off updating it and you're not ready to move forward.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it another great tip that Kim and I always go back to was Sean and Charlene, and they just said realistically, plan, like an hour, half an hour to an hour every day where you're checking something off with that home study until you get it completed. And then you can just kind of
Mhm.
wipe your hands and toast a glass of wine and celebrate that that was checked off. But set reminders so that it doesn't lapse, so that you don't have,
Mhm.
the update come and go 3 months ago and now you're realizing that it's expired. So
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be complicated. I wouldn't say it's hard. Most people usually say, I made a bigger deal out of worrying about my home study than I needed to. But a lot of people will also say, just stay on top of it because you need to get it done. And it will be overwhelming if you're scrambling at the last minute to get everything together.
Mhm.
Um, so I hope that that was helpful. Let's see here. We have a couple more minutes before we wrap up. Here, we had a
And
great
remember
feedback
too,
here.
if the
We have
home study,
well, I was just going to read here.
yeah,
We have a fire extinguisher in our kitchen, but not on the counter. So, but that was the thing. Like, who hangs it on their wall
right.
like they're in the middle of a Chinese restaurant or something? I mean, just, um, yeah, nobody does that.
Well, and here's the thing too. People kind of get a little freaked out or anxious or just plain afraid of going through the home study. They're petrified that they're going to do something wrong and that they're going to get an F on their, fail on their home study report. Well, like Libby said, the home study provider is usually in social work and working with adoption because she wants to help people actually adopt. Okay, so she is there to help you, and it's really you know, let's say that you were currently going through your home study and you have your fire extinguisher stored under the kitchen sink. Well, she comes over to your house and she's like, well, where's your fire extinguisher? And then you say it's under the kitchen sink. And she'll say, well, it needs to be hung on the wall. You're not failed right then and there. She gives you the chance to go ahead and put it on the wall. You know, and this is just a season. That's so funny. The fire extinguisher is now going to be like an icon in my mind of home study. Yes, it's a season.
Oh no, we had best home study story I heard was that the house flooded the week before the home visit. Oh, yeah, that would be really stressful. But again, those are things, if something weird happens, your home
Mhm.
study provider has probably heard of it or seen it before. So don't ever hesitate to
Yeah.
say, you know, hey, we're in the middle of a remodel. Is that going to prevent us from moving forward right now? Their
Mhm.
answers are probably going to be no. Let me come over and make sure that, you know, the majority of the living space in the house is functioning. Um,
Right.
so don't, yeah,
Like if
don't
you're
panic.
remodeling your guest room, that does not affect the baby, you
Right.
know.
Even if it's a
But
kitchen
if
or a
you,
bathroom remodel, I'm sure there's still some way that they evaluate, you know,
yeah,
how long is this going to take? What are your safety precautions right now? So they're going to be realistic.
running water,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
hmm hot
Um,
water.
it's great. I love all the stories that are popping up right now. It's funny. Um, oh well, we do have some really good people here. I guess I need to go out and get a fire extinguisher because some people are saying, well, we actually do have it hanging on the wall. Um, I don't have a lot of wall
They
space,
probably
so
think
I'm not
we're
even
weird,
sure where that would
Libby.
happen.
We don't, they probably think we're weird that we don't have. I don't. I think there might be one somewhere in the garage, but that's not going to help me in an
It's
emergency.
funny. So,
Yeah.
you know, the same thing goes for contacting Lifetime. You know, if you're listening right now, whether you're working with Lifetime already or you're thinking about starting with Lifetime, um, we have heard and seen a lot. So please don't ever hesitate. If you think it's a weird question or a weird situation, you know, reach out to your coordinator because she can help you. And sometimes it's just more a matter of us saying, um, yeah, that's something you need to ask your home study provider about. And then at least you know, oh,
Mhm.
oh, okay. Um,
Right.
and other times it might be um, maybe you're not sure you need to, you know, this happens once in a while. You might know that in 3 to 6 months you're going to have to move, and maybe you're not sure how that affects your adoption right now. So when you communicate that, then you can get guidance about the best steps to take so that everything moves smoothly with your
Mhm.
adoption. So just again, please don't ever hesitate to let us know your questions. We are happy to answer them, to point you in the direction of more resources or more information, because we know that a lot of you, you know, you're all very individual people too, and we can't generalize every single answer. So, you know,
Mhm.
coming back to even our Q&A tonight is that if we couldn't touch on a question or we didn't have time to get to it tonight, please reach out and share that question with us anyways. You know, you can email adopt@lifetimeadoption.com or you can write to your coordinator personally, and we're happy to help with anything we can. And Kim, I always love the way you explain, going back to our application process, we had a question come in that said, so, but what if my application is denied? And can you talk a little bit about,
Mhm.
you know, how Lifetime reviews that application and that it's not about a pass-fail evaluation, but rather finding the right
Mhm.
stepping stone?
Right. Here at Lifetime, what we're looking for is families that are open to the birth moms we're seeing and display characteristics that we see birth moms are requesting or selecting in our recent adoptions. So it's really not a list of pass-fail criteria, like Libby said. It's really a matter of Lifetime's review committee being able to get their eyes on your application to look it over as a whole, see where there could be some challenges, if any, see how you might make up for some of those by having really open preferences or some characteristics that are really hot with birth moms, such as if you're in the educational or medical field, those are big requests for birth moms. If you're not, that doesn't mean you won't adopt, but let's say you've got 2 children, but you're a teacher. Okay, well, then that's a good, balance there. So we're going to look at everything as a whole and give you feedback accordingly. There may be times when we need more information. If you've checked a certain preference on your application and we need to know what you mean by that, or if that's really your answer, or are you actually a little more open than that? We will, email you or call you to get more clarification. And then if your application is pre-approved from there, we'll move forward to the phone conference to learn even more details before we give you our final response as to whether or not we can assist in your adoption. Sometimes we're looking for certain kinds of families, certain kinds of preferences, and no matter how great a family is, if they don't meet what we need for our program, then we can't really offer to assist. Our evaluation is not based on whether or not a family can adopt. It's not based on whether or not they'll be great parents or what great people they are. It's not based on any of those things. It's just based on it is based on whether or not you have a criminal background with multiple felonies. Obviously, we're not going to offer. But you get what I'm saying. Take it with a grain of salt. We are looking at everything as a whole and only offering to explore further if we are confident that we can move to the next step and we want to learn more. And then when we offer to assist, we are confident that you would be successful in our program here at Lifetime with all the things that we have going on in our program. So I would say don't be afraid of the application process. Just fill it out. It's probably going to feel really good to answer some of those questions and to take that first step and start to make your dreams a reality. There's really nothing personal if we can't offer to assist in someone's adoption because we do have limited openings. Only about 17% of the applications move forward to a phone conference. So if you're in the other, large majority of percentage that just isn't offered a phone conference, that doesn't mean you're not going to adopt. It just means we can't help you right now. You're always welcome to reapply or have your application reviewed at a later date when, who knows, things might change. But we hope that if we can't help you, you'll quickly move forward to find the right place that can help you and be a little more proactive and not wait around for us. Although certainly if we call you later, we're hoping that you're still available if we need you at that time. But it's also great to hear, hey, no, we already moved forward with someone else and we've adopted, or we're matched right now. So keep your momentum. No matter what the response is from the application, don't take it as a personal thing. Just explore further if it's a yes, or explore elsewhere if it's a no.
Very good. Well, we had some great questions tonight. I loved all the activity. The questions and comments are still popping in. So I'm sorry if we couldn't get to your question tonight. And again, some of you may have even had an answer here behind the scenes that just said, reach out to your coordinator, or you may have been directed to the person you should contact. So please follow through with that. We'd love to hear from you. And just remember, you can always speak with someone at Lifetime if you call Monday through Friday at 1-800-923-6784. And of course, remember, Lifetime Adoption is our main website, and we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you can look for more webinars too. So if you missed a webinar recently and you want to catch up on that, you can go to adoptionwebinar.com, or if you're a Lifetime family, you can check out your membership website and look for webinars you may have missed. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions and comments tonight. And for those of you listening intently, we thank you for giving us your ear this evening. Kim, thank you for your expertise and your advice. I feel like we covered a lot of ground here, and I stopped taking notes because we were going so fast. So hopefully I'll remember what we could tell the web team when they go to put this up online. But we look forward to hearing from all of you and to seeing where the next step leads with your own personal adoption story. So have a great evening.
Yes, absolutely.
And keep in touch.
Have a great evening, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
Great. Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night.